Hmm. Good evening. Now, before we get started for today, I wanted to request you that feel very free in asking your doubts and questions. All right, don't hesitate. And I personally think instead of contacting me individually after the class, unless it's a personal issue, as long as it is a sociology related issue, you should raise it in the class itself without feeling any sense of hesitation. So please tell me if there are any questions from yesterday's lecture. You were supposed to get a sheet, you have received it. What is the yeah. This is an abridged version of my yesterday's lecture because if you are not able to take down notes, otherwise whatever is relevant I'll dictate to you in the class and you can write it down. But this is a brief abridged version which contains everything important in the lecture. So if there are any questions, please tell me. I'll be very happy to answer your questions. Yes. Yes. Both enlightenment and counter enlightenment, they combine to produce sociology as a new science. The reason why new science was needed, you have understood that economic and political revolutions, they've produced many good things, like even political revolutions led to establishment of democracy, change of monarchical system to democracy. So there was always a positive side to it, but there was also lot that was negative, particularly the chaos, disorganization, violence, poverty, all these problems were there. So people wanted to understand why the world which they have created is becoming unmanageable. As I told you yesterday, that statement that Christianity used to say, God said, let there be light, and there was light. Now people were saying, Newton said, let there be light, and there was light. So this new world was a product of human effort, human intelligence, human ingenuity, human courage. And yet it was becoming more and more unmanageable. It's like, I'll give you a very simple example. You have a child, the parents pour their love on the child to bring him up, hoping he'll become a good person, and he becomes a scoundrel. So parents will have a sense of shock कि क्या हो गया, हमने तो सब ठीक किया था. So it is like that. It was their baby, bourgeois creation. Bourgeoisie, you remember, the bourgeoisie is a term used for describing the wealthy merchants, industrialists, and other people who emerged after the demise or collapse of feudalism. So that was the question. So that created the curiosity and therefore a need for new knowledge. कि भाई इसको समझना है. Religion is not providing an answer anymore. So, one set of people who reflected on these changes, tried to form an idea about these changes, tried to explain. That is why their ideas, yesterday I called philosophy of history. Their ideas belong to the field of philosophy of history. Philosophy means an explanation of the basic nature of something, true nature of something. And history means change. So, what is the nature of change? ये क्या हो रहा है? Which way are we going? Is it a better world or a bad world we are ending up in? These were the questions people raised. One set of people who have been called Enlightenment thinkers, they appreciated the changes. They introduced the idea of progress. They said mankind is progressing. We are heading for a better world, a more rational world. They condemned feudal order. So their ideas were a legitimization of industrial capitalism. These people were also highly inspired by growth of sciences. It had so happened from 16th and 17th century onwards, Galileo, Newton, Robert Boyle and so many other scientists had emerged in 17th and 18th century. So they were greatly inspired by science, particularly the fact that science was able to produce a certain knowledge, accurate and precise knowledge, with the help of which the physical world could be controlled. Physics gave birth to engineering. The physical world could be controlled. And for producing this knowledge, they had devised a method which could generate that certified, accurate knowledge. So, they took the next step. The next step was that if we can produce this knowledge about physical world by using that method, maybe we can use the same method to study human society also and produce a similar knowledge about human society as well. Mind you, so far all knowledge about human society was religious knowledge. So they said we could produce a similar knowledge about human society, because they said the problems that we are encountering are temporary blemishes, temporary problems. They can be eliminated. They are the result of bad education and bad. मिल गया है सबको? अच्छा, सबको नहीं मिला. The problems are because of bad education and bad legislation. So new knowledge and new education can solve these problems. So apply methods of sciences to change the society into a more rational society. This is what Enlightenment thinkers said. So the method needed for new knowledge was to be scientific method according to Enlightenment thinkers. Now, at the same time, there were other people. If I cite an example, Louis de Bonald and Joseph de Maistre. This won't work. Now I can write. Louis de Bonald and Joseph de Maistre. The means of, it's a French name. So, Louis of Bonald. This is how landowners used to name themselves. This is what they do in India also. Prakash Singh Badal. Prakash Singh from Badal village. So, Louis from Bonald and Joseph from Maistre. These were the two thinkers, the example of most, you can say, most conservative thinkers who thought that the entire world is getting disintegrated, disorganized, that the medieval world, medieval means before modernity. So, the traditional medieval society, it was so peaceful, so harmonious, so close-knit. The social relations had so much of compassion and fellow feeling. That society is breaking down and a chaotic world is emerging. So they did not regard it as progress. They saw the changes as indicating decadence in society, disintegration, breakdown of society. So they also articulated their ideas. Now later day people who became sociologists, none of them is a sociologist. Enlightenment thinkers are not sociologists. They are only saying that apply the methods of science and create a better world. But they did not either tell how to use the methods of science and never did they try to do it themselves. They were philosophers. And same is the case with conservatives. They were also philosophical thinkers. So they were not sociologists. However, those later day people who did become sociologists, they were also influenced by counter-enlightenment. That indeed this chaos has to be stopped. In fact, maybe today, I am not sure whether I will be able to reach up to that topic today, but I will be talking about one of the founder of sociology, who is also often called the father of sociology, Auguste Comte. So, he condemned Enlightenment thinkers and he said that the role of Enlightenment thinkers was all negative because they rejected the feudal order and as a result of that created chaos and disorganization in society. So they were influenced by this current of thought of conservatives. So what is to be the goal of sociology when they tried to develop sociology? What was to be the goal of society? The goal of society was to create a better society, and this better society should be peaceful and harmonious society. And that is why I made this point yesterday also, that while Enlightenment thinkers glorified individual freedom, man is becoming liberated from societal control, each man can do whatever they want to. This is a justification of free market economy, capitalism. It was just, you are understanding the point. No? So, they were glorifying individual freedom, but Comte and other sociologists, they focused on society. That society is more important than individual. Individuals should be subordinated to society, controlled by society. All right. That is what is conservative influence. They said, when they talked about society, they said, society is like an organism. Just like in biology, you have a body, an organism. Every part should work according to its relationship with other parts. Only then the organism can survive. So, No part can exist autonomously, independently of its own. Each part can only exist by being governed by the overall organism. So they compared individuals to that. In fact, Auguste Comte even said, individual is not a unit of society. Family is the basic unit of society. So this shows influence of conservative thought. कि भाई पहले stability लाओ, peace लाओ, harmony लाओ. You would know by reading about India itself that there is no freedom when there is violence. Punjab terrorism, democracy collapse. Kashmir terrorism, democracy has suppressed. Freedom can exist only when there is peace and harmony. So, first priority is that people should obey the law and there must be peace. This is what was being said by conservative. Alright. So, sociology was to create a society which would be peaceful and harmonious, in which all people would be governed by commonly shared rules. This influence comes from counter-enlightenment, anti-modernity. On the other hand, as I said, enlightenment was a justification of modernity. Enlightenment influences to the extent saying, one, that we can produce a better society. It created a sense of hope. By using methods of science, we can create new knowledge. The knowledge with the help of which we can control and shape the society according to our design. You remember, I mentioned a statement, to know is to predict and to predict is to control. If you have the laws, knowledge of laws like Newton's law of gravitation, you can predict what will happen to every object when it is left for a free fall in the air. It will fall down. You can predict it without having to test it. So, if you are able to discover laws, you can predict the future phenomena. And if you can predict, you can control. So, this is an idea which came from enlightenment, that apply methods of science, discover knowledge, and use that knowledge to control and shape society according to your choice. And that society should be peaceful and harmonious society. So that is how it is a confluence of both the currents of thought, liberalism, liberal ideology of enlightenment, and conservative ideology of counter-enlightenment. Is it clear? Fully clear? Okay. और बताइए. Any other question? How to take down notes? See, yesterday's lecture, because it was first lecture, and I thought you will not be able to properly take down notes, so I have handwritten and got it typed. This is a brief summary of the lecture. So you already have the notes for the yesterday's lecture. And here today onwards, whatever is important, I will dictate. You can write it down. Clear? Yes, please. Anything else? Feel absolutely free in raising your doubts. Yes.
Modernity and modernization.
Modernity is a state of society, type of society, and modernization is the process by which we are heading towards that stage of modernity. Modernity is the result of modernization. Yes, they called it better society, but that society was actually capitalist society. The better society for them was capitalism only. because they said it should be based on equality, it should be based on freedom, free market, free labor, free production, free opinion, no control over thinking and ideas, freedom of speech and expression. All these are aspects of capitalist society. So it was a legitimization, a justification of industrial capitalism. Capitalism passed through many stages. After, as feudalism started declining, first there was mercantilist capitalism. That means profits were being generated through trade. I gave you the example of East India Company. That was a case of mercantilist capitalism. Then there was capitalistic agriculture. That agriculture was also used, land was also used to generate profits, not simply to satisfy human needs, but to create profit. And then finally, it was followed by industrial capitalism, manufacturing through factories. Yes, you were asking.
So can we say that economic revolution was the starting point, started the process of modernity, economic revolution?
We will not say that there were changes happening at the political level also, though that they were not revolutionary changes. All right. Economy was also changing, society was also changing, everything was simultaneously happening. All right. ऐसा नहीं था कि everything remained the same, only economy changed. It didn't happen like that. But economic transformation had far-reaching consequences at all levels.
It made a huge huge impact, right?
Yeah, it made an impact on all facets of life. Politics also changed, family life changed, knowledge changed, science developed, and relations changed, community changed from rural to urban areas, people moved from village to cities. Any other question? No more doubts? Can I start today's lecture? So today I shall first take up science, scientific method and its critique. Actually, there is another topic under the same heading. If you have the syllabus, you can look at it. Positivism and its critique. I don't know why the examiner has mentioned both, because positivism is nothing but scientific method. Positivism was the name used by Auguste Comte, the founder of sociology, who coined this name sociology and wrote the first work which has been regarded as the beginning of sociology. So he used the term positivism. But the content of positivism is the same as scientific method. So I'll take up both these topics. So we start with the question, what is science? We have already talked about, while discussing emergence of sociology, that Enlightenment thinkers were greatly inspired by success of science, and science was able to produce knowledge of new kind which helped in controlling the world. So what is this science? You can write down the definition of science. Science refers to a systematic body of certified and changing knowledge based upon observable facts. I repeat, science refers to a systematic body of certified and changing knowledge based upon observable facts. The method adopted to acquire this knowledge is called scientific method. Now, let me explain the definition to you. That firstly, I said science refers to a systematic body. Systematic simply means methodical. A knowledge acquired using a proper method. Systematic body of certified knowledge. This is where science differs from other forms of knowledge like common sense or religion, that they are not certified. Scientific knowledge is constantly certified, repeatedly certified. Only then it is accepted. See, let's say the idea of God. There is no certification. Nobody has seen God. Nobody has figured out that whether he is tall or short or whatever characteristics, whether he is male or female. Hindus do believe that it is both. There are gods as well as goddesses. And they have depicted him in physical form, but there is no certification that this is exactly how Lord Rama looked. We have to accept it on the basis of faith, on the face value. We have been made to believe that this is how God looked, and so we accept him as that. So there is no certification. And because it is certified, so it is changing knowledge. Because knowledge has no sanctity of its own. Only when that knowledge is certified, it is accepted. While trying to certify, you may come across new facts which will transform that knowledge. So it keeps changing. I think all of you must have read elementary science. I'll cite an example. Newton, on the basis of his observation, found that beams of light traveled in a straight line. And when there is an opaque body, it formed a shadow. So using his law of inertia, he said light is made up of tiny particles which are not visible, but because it is law of inertia says that a body keeps going in motion in a straight line as long as its motion is not resisted. So opaque body resists the motion and so a shadow is formed. So light is made up of tiny particles. He called them corpuscles. It is called corpuscular theory of light. All right. This idea was accepted because it was certified by observation that when light fell on an opaque body, there was a shadow. But later on, they found through further observation that actually there was a phenomena called interference and there was a phenomena called diffraction. So they said, no, it is not particles, it is waves. Light is wave motion. So they said it is electromagnetic waves. Nobody said, how can you question Newton? Like you can say, how can you question Bible? You can say that in religion. But you can't say, how can you question Newton? They dumped Newton in the dustbin and they said wave motion, light is a form of wave motion. Later on, Einstein further carried out investigation and he said it is the photon theory of light, that light is made up of photons. Sometimes they behave like a bundle of particles and sometimes they behave like waves. So wave particle dualism. So as new facts keep coming to light, you change the existing knowledge according to those facts. That is the fundamental character of science. So science is therefore a certified and at the same time a changing body of knowledge, which is acquired methodically. And another character of science is that certification is based on observable facts. What is the basis of certification? We said it is certified knowledge. How is it certified? Observable fact, sensory observation. All right. So, such type of knowledge is called scientific knowledge. And the method used for acquiring this knowledge is called the scientific method. Now read the definition, tell me if there is anything you are not clear about. So, now we move on to scientific method. As we noted in the definition that science is knowledge based on observable facts. Now, to create knowledge through observation makes a certain demand on the observer. Suppose I tell you, please go out and observe and tell me, give me the observed knowledge. So you do go out, stand on Pusa Road, look all around, and you will come back bewildered. And you will talk incoherently. You will say wind, dust, rain, vehicles, dogs, pollution, and so on and so forth. unconnected facts you will narrate. That is all you can observe, isn't it? Now, such unconnected ideas is not knowledge. So, to acquire knowledge through observation, you have to look at the reality from a certain point of view. You have to begin with some assumptions about the reality first. This is the paradox. You want to gain knowledge on the basis of observation, but you have to begin with certain knowledge which is not based on observation. Assumptions means not observed. Isn't it? The very meaning of assumption is something that is not a fact, which is something which you have presumed yourself. You have just assumed it. Isn't it? So you have to begin with certain assumptions. Otherwise, you cannot gain knowledge through observation. I'll give you an example. Suppose you go to a doctor saying that I have headache. Now, doctor is a scientist. He may take out his blood pressure measuring instrument and start measuring your blood pressure, checking your BP. You will say, doctor, I don't have blood ache. I have only headache. Why are you looking at my blood circulation? It is because doctor has already been made to accept certain assumptions. That human body is an organism, that different parts are connected with each other. And malfunctioning in one part is the result of malfunctioning in another part. And he is trying to identify that other part which is malfunctioning, because of which there is a headache. If he did not have these assumptions, then what would he have done? He would have searched for the ache in the hair, somewhere ache is hidden here. Isn't it? So to carry out observation, you have to begin with a set of assumptions. Because unconnected information is not knowledge. Knowledge, when it is connected with other facts, when some facts are connected with other facts, then they produce meaningful knowledge. So, doctor will say, you have headache because of high blood pressure, because of hypertension. This is knowledge. All right. So, in every science, we have to start with certain assumptions about the reality. First requirement of science is a set of assumptions about the reality to be explored. In the case of social science, people can make different kind of assumptions about society. So there can be different type of assumptions. A set of, write it down, a set of mutually consistent assumptions about social reality is called perspective. A set of mutually consistent assumptions. Did you understand the meaning of mutually consistent? Mutually consistent means these assumptions should not be contradicting each other. They should be logically consistent with each other. All right? A set of mutually consistent assumptions about the reality is called the perspective. So, we begin with a perspective. All right? Now, the only thing about science is that we do not accept these assumptions, blindly. We constantly put these assumptions to test and retain these assumptions as long as facts certify them. As long as they are certified or supported by facts, we retain these assumptions. Otherwise, we abandon these assumptions. All right. Now, that is how one philosopher of science has made a distinction between normal science and revolutionary science. Most of the science is called normal science because in that scientific inquiry, facts keep on supporting the assumption. Facts justify the assumption. On the other hand, sometimes in the course of research, we come across such facts which question the assumptions, reject the assumptions. That is called revolutionary science. And this leads to new assumptions. Revolutionary science therefore revises, drastically overhauls our perspective. We adopt a new set of assumptions in tune with the new facts of light that have come to light. So, perspective is one requirement of scientific method, that we have to begin with a set of assumptions. Second, next, science also demands concepts. Concepts, a body of concepts. Now, this is very simple. If you can appreciate the importance of language in daily life, then you can also appreciate the role of concepts. Concepts are what scientific language is made up of. See, language consists of symbols, which are abstractions. I'll explain what it means. Symbol is something which represents something else. That's called symbolic. All right? Like red light is a symbol. It means exercising brakes and stopping the movement on the road. So it's a symbol. All language is made up of symbols. Phonetic symbols, spoken language. Written language is called graphic symbols. Like you say man. Actually, there is no such thing as man. Man, where is man? What you have are certain organisms with certain characteristics that they walk on 2 feet and they have hands and erect posture and so on and so forth. It is that kind of organism that exists in reality. Man is not there. Some people give it one label as man, दूसरे कहते हैं आदमी. That's another label. So these are symbols which are attached to that organism. What exists is that organism. These are only symbols, labels which are attached to the reality. And because these labels are mentally created labels, so they are called abstractions. Abstraction is something which does not exist by itself, which exists only in ideas, which is created by the mind. That is what is abstraction. So all symbols are abstract. Now, it is through these symbols we comprehend reality, we describe reality, we think about reality, both outside and inside us. You can't think without symbols. You can feel without language, but you can't think without language. Because language is communicating to yourself. Thinking is communicating to yourself. Talking to yourself silently. That is what is thinking. When you are loudly talking to others, it is called talking. So both require symbols. Human mind can only work with the help of symbols. Now, in science also we have to describe reality. Say, I'll give you an example. The reality is that somebody has torn clothes, somebody is hungry, he is not able to, he doesn't have money to send his children to school, he can't avail of the services of a doctor. I'm describing a situation. We have a label on it, poor. Poor is the label which describes all this. So it is through this we say, oh, he is poor. All right. Some people are rich, some people are poor, some people live in big house, some live in small houses. We say social inequality. That's a symbol by which we describe this situation. So this is how we need linguistic symbols to talk about the reality. You have understood this point? Now science also needs to observe and talk about reality. So science also makes use of symbols. These linguistic symbols are called concepts. The only difference is that these symbols in science are defined in a very precise manner. Their meanings are standardized. All right. We try to ensure that there is minimal ambiguity about the meaning of these symbols when they are used in science. Because, why? Because science is a communitarian activity. Science involves participation of lot of scientists. Suppose I carry out an observation and arrive at knowledge. I declare that this is what I found. Others will not accept it on face value because I am saying it. They'll say we'll test it, certify it. So they will also talk about the same thing. So when they are trying to test what I have said, there should not be any confusion in between us. They should understand what I am talking about. That means we should use a common language, common set of concepts. Their meaning should be standardized. So this is what is the character of concept. That concepts are abstractions and symbolic in nature, and scientists use concept to comprehend, you can write it down, to comprehend, describe, observe, and communicate about different variables that constitute social reality. Yes. Scientists use the concepts to comprehend, describe, observe, and communicate about different variables that constitute social reality. Now, so this is the role of concepts. It is through concept we approach reality. It is through concept we try to understand reality. It is through concept we communicate our experience of reality to others. All right? And the reality is described in the form of variables. This is another term I have added. It's a concept used in science. Variables is very simple. Different aspect of reality which can vary, which can differ, and which can be observed. For example, if I say divorce leads to suicide, divorce is one variable, suicide is another variable. All right. Now, as a scientist, I'll have to define what exactly is suicide, that will be the concept of suicide. What exactly is divorce, that will be the concept of divorce. Now, like all sciences, sociology also uses a body of concept. Only thing is that often the concepts in sociology are taken from day-to-day language and given a precise, specific meaning. For example, society itself is a concept in sociology. What is society? Then culture, class, interaction. These are examples of concepts which you will come across in sociology. Just like when you talk about physics, you say mass, velocity, acceleration, power, force, work. These are the concepts in mechanics. So same way there are concepts in sociology. Now, then, so every science should have a body of concepts which should be defined as unambiguously as possible. Why I say as unambiguously as possible? Because in sociology there is a lot of problem. Concept, different people give different meaning to concepts. So there is no total agreement always. This is a problem in sociology. We don't have this problem in physics and chemistry and biology, but this is a problem in sociology. That sometimes different sociologists give different meaning to the concepts. Then, third requirement of scientific method. First is perspective, second is a body of concepts, third, gathering information and constructing explanation. Gathering information and constructing explanation. So, there are 3 steps involved in this. One, observation. Secondly, comparison and classification. And third, generalization. हाँ, वो जो फ्लो चार्ट था वो बना दो. हाँ जी. ठीक. So, observation, comparison and classification, and third is generalization. So, starting with observation. Science is based on observable facts. So, what are facts? This is important because we will come to this issue again and again in the course of our discussion on sociology. What are facts? Those aspects of reality, that means social reality or social life, which are definite, certain, definite, comma, certain, comma, self-evident, and have an independent existence of their own. They are called facts or sometimes objective facts. I'll explain the meaning. Definite means well defined. All right. Like, say, this pillar. It has a well defined height that can be measured and observed. It has a well defined shape. It doesn't keep changing from moment to moment. And is self evident. Known, can be known by observation from outside that there is a pillar here, column. And it exists independent of the observer. Whether I notice it or not, it is there. So there are two kinds of reality. One are independent, other are or objective, other are subjective. You must have heard of this statement. Beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. All right. What is beautiful to me may not be beautiful to anybody else. It doesn't have an independent existence. Beauty depends on my liking. It depends on me. It is not independent. It is a subjective fact. But the size of the pillar is independent of me. If I close my eye and start walking, it will bang my head and remind me that I am there, though you didn't observe me. So it is independent. So objective facts have an independent existence. Now, as I mentioned, we will come back to it again. There is a debate in sociology whether social life is objective or subjective. Does social life have an objective existence? This issue will come for debate. So just keep that in mind. Now, because facts have an independent existence, they can be known by observation from outside. Subjective facts cannot be known by observation from outside. I cannot figure out what feelings or likings and dislikes you have in your mind about my teaching. All right, that's a subjective fact. That can be known, that cannot be known by looking at your face. At best, I can interpret it that if you are making a dirty face, that means you hate my teaching. Joking. So, I can only make an interpretation, but that may not be true. So, when something is an objective fact, it can be known by observation from outside. That is the characteristic of scientific data, that they should be observable and hence verifiable. So, science is supposed to be a knowledge based on objective facts, based on observation of objective facts. Now, as I told you, that collection of isolated, unconnected facts lead to chaos. It doesn't produce knowledge. So facts have to be observed in their interconnectedness. That means in relation with other facts. They have to be seen, one type of facts have to be observed in relation to another type of facts. Then only they give us meaningful knowledge. So even our observation of facts should be in interconnectedness. We should observe the facts in interconnectedness. Now, which fact can be connected to which other fact is a big question. I'll give you an example which I read in a sociology book only, that in one of the years in England, number of marriages solemnized shot up. And the same year, the import of perfumes from France also shot up. Can you connect these two facts? That people applied perfume, they became attractive to each other, fell in love and decided to get married. Can this connection be valid? Both are facts. Both are hard facts. Both happened. But we know that marriage is a serious matter. People will not take the decision only on the basis of the perfume. So, actually there was a third fact which has not been included. That was the year employment rate in England shot up. When people settled in the career, they thought they'll settle in their personal life also. And because they had jobs, they had surplus money to spend on luxuries like perfume. So they purchased perfume. So the demand for perfume. Now this connection sounds reasonable. So we have to identify the proper facts which can be legitimately connected with other facts before we start the observation. All right. So we do this with the help of a hypothesis. Hypothesis. What is hypothesis? Hypothesis is an educated guess which may be based on common sense or past experience. But it also involves a leap of creative imagination. So we may define hypothesis formally as a proposition which formulates, write down, a proposition which formulates a logical but untested and tentative relationship between two or more variables expressed in terms of scientific concepts. Expressed in terms of scientific concept. Now please read this definition. What does it mean? Hypothesis. You know, hypo means below. Hyper means above. Hypo means below. Thesis means knowledge. So, it is a knowledge which is below the thesis. That means untested, not yet proven, but just an idea, a tentative idea which has not yet been proven, which has not yet become a thesis. Thesis means established knowledge. So, hypothesis is an untested knowledge about the reality. Now, this untested knowledge establishes a logical relationship between two or more variables. I'll take up the same example I mentioned a little while ago, that divorce may lead to suicide among women. Now, divorce is one variable, suicide is another variable, and rate of suicide is therefore directly proportional to rate of divorce. This is a logical relationship. All right. Now, this is a tentative statement. We are not sure about it. It has not yet been tested and proved. So, it is an example of a hypothesis. Another example could be urbanization may lead to increase in crime. Urbanization is one variable, crime is another variable, and the logical relationship is that they are directly proportional. Rate of urbanization is directly proportional to rate of crime. Clear? So, these are examples of hypothesis. They are called hypothesis because so far it has not yet been proved. All right. So, hypothesis tells us what facts are to be observed, in what relationship. What facts are to be observed in what relationship? I told you, no, that we have to observe facts in interconnectedness. So, the first hypothesis will delimit the scope of observation. It will tell me that I don't have to look around for everything, as I gave you the example that if you go to Pusa Road and observe all around everything, that's not the way scientists operate. Now, the scope of observation is delimited. I have to look at the divorce rate and suicide rate. And I have to test this idea that whether they are directly proportional. Because this is what the hypothesis says. This has to be tested. Hypothesis is not to be proved. It has to be tested. Science is interested in testing hypothesis, not proving hypothesis. Now, where does the hypothesis come from? How do we arrive at the hypothesis? Now, that is why we say that science begins with existing knowledge. There has to be some knowledge which has to be the source of hypothesis. So, what do? We begin by selecting the topic of research. All right. Then we review the existing knowledge, review the previous literature on that topic, and take into account all forms of existing knowledge. Here, one perspective. The existing perspective is also existing knowledge. The basic assumptions with which we have started. In fact, when a science is just beginning, then the only knowledge, existing knowledge, is those perspective and common sense ideas. All right. Later on, when science develops, other theories may also develop and they may be added to the existing knowledge. So, taking this entire stock of knowledge, we may choose some knowledge in this as a source of hypothesis. I said women. In the example I have said divorce among women may lead to suicide. All right. Now this is a hypothesis I have derived from common sense knowledge. All right. Common sense observation. We have to now test it. Is it true? Now, we have to therefore deduce the hypothesis. Deduce means deductive logic. I gave you the example of doctor and headache. There the doctor used deductive logic. How? He has an existing knowledge that different parts of body are interconnected. Malfunctioning in one may be the result of malfunctioning in another. This is assumption. From this I deduce head and blood circulation are two parts of the body. So they are also connected. Malfunctioning in one may be the result of malfunctioning in the other. This is how I have deduced that hypertension may be the cause of headache. That is a hypothesis. Tentative. I am saying it is possible. I am not yet sure whether this is the case. Then I measure the blood pressure and see whether the hypertension is there or not. Of all you know, there is no BP problem. So then headache may be the result of some other factor. Then I will have to look for a new hypothesis. Did you understand it? Everybody has understood this. This is what is called deduction. So you have to use deductive logic to arrive at the hypothesis. Now you will say, what is the difference between the basic assumption that different parts of the body are interconnected, and the hypothesis that hypertension leads to headache. Hypothesis is more specific, precise. The assumptions are more general, imprecise. It says different parts of the body are interconnected. It can apply to any part. It's not specific. When I have to observe, I have to know which part to observe. All right? I may not start looking for headache cause in the nails of my big toe. That is also a part. So, hypothesis is precise, short, and unambiguous. The characteristics of a good hypothesis. What are the characteristics of a good hypothesis? A good hypothesis must be short, precise, and unambiguous. Two, it should be specific enough to be testable. It should be specific enough to be testable. Now, what does it mean, testable hypothesis? See, I'll make a statement. This is how India's meteorological department used to make predictions earlier, not now. Now they've become different. They make specific predictions. That today in the evening there might be thunder shower, cloudy sky, or bright sunlight. All right. Now, if I make such a statement, it has to be any of the three only. All right. So, or another way, I say it may rain or may not rain. This statement is not testable, because whatever happens, the statement would be true. All right. So, if you make such a statement, it is untestable. It is not falsifiable. Testable statement is one which is falsifiable. You understand falsifiable? That it is possible to disprove it. This cannot be disproved, because either there will be a rain or there will not be a rain. So, the hypothesis should always be specific enough that it is testable, that means potentially falsifiable. Next, it should include concepts. It should include concepts which are operationalizable. What does that mean? I repeat, it should include concepts which are operationalizable. It should be possible to operationalize the concept. That's what it means. But I have not explained anything by saying it. Now, what is operationalizing? See, I said in the beginning, and I emphasized on this, that concepts are abstractions. Concepts are not concrete. This chair is concrete. It can be observed, measured, weighed, but concepts are not concrete like that. I'll give you an example. Alienation is a concept we are going to talk about in detail. It is a part of your syllabus you may see under Karl Marx. So, alienation, it's a concept. What does it mean? Simple meaning of alienation is to be estranged, to be detached, to be uninvolved, to be separated. These are the shades of meaning of alienation. Now, Karl Marx had said that workers in capitalist society are alienated. All right. Suppose I want to test this assumption, this claim of Karl Marx. All right. So I decide on workers. Maruti factory is so close by, so I'll decide, let me go to Maruti factory and see if Maruti factory workers are alienated. So I go to the factory. Now I will not have workers carrying a badge here, I am alienated or I am not alienated. How would I know they are alienated or not? Where will I find alienation? Factory will have machines, cars, buildings, people, but where would be alienation? How to observe it? This is a fundamental problem in social sciences. So, I'll have to do something about it. I'll have to redefine alienation in a manner that it becomes observable. How? I'll argue that if somebody is alienated as a worker, he is likely to be absent from work very often because he doesn't like the work. One, he is likely to protest very often. He will be a member of the strikes. All right. Now, whether he is attending the factory or not, that can be known from the attendance sheet. And whether he participated in strike or not can also be known. This is observable. So, I have redefined alienation in terms of indices. Indices is a plural of index. Indices which are observable. This process is called operationalization. When you redefine a concept which is an abstraction into observable indices, this is called operationalization. Did you understand it? So, only then research can be carried out that the concepts should be such that they can be operationalized. Then next, hypothesis should make such demands on data which can be collected through available techniques. The data that is demanded by the hypothesis, because as I told you, hypothesis tells you what data to collect, what information, what facts to gather, isn't it? So, the demand for facts should be such that available techniques of data collection which you have, with that you can collect the data. Otherwise, research would not be possible. And to the extent possible, the hypothesis should be derived from a theory. From an existing theory, you should derive a hypothesis. I'll give you an example of how from the theory we can derive a hypothesis, deduce a hypothesis. I gave a general example of the doctor. Now I'll give you an example from sociology, where hypothesis has been deduced from a theory. There is a theory on suicide given by Emil Durkheim. We are going to study that in detail. That's a part of your course. So I'm taking that as an example. In that study of suicide, Durkheim arrived at a theory. I'm given to loud speaking and the throat gets dry very fast. So, the theory that Durkheim discovered is rate of suicide is inversely proportional to solidarity. Solidarity. What does it mean? Rate of suicide, you understand. Say how many people per lakh per year commit suicide in a country, in any particular society. That is rate of suicide. Now, that is inversely proportional. I am sure you understand the meaning of inverse proportionality also. Okay. So, it is inversely proportional to solidarity. Solidarity means unity, cohesiveness. If you are highly united in your family, in your community, in your neighborhood, that means you have high solidarity. If you are a loner, lonely fellow, not connected to anyone, broken family, and all existing by yourself, then you don't have solidarity. I am just giving example to understand. So now you understood the meaning of the theory. Rate of suicide is inversely proportional to solidarity. That means if you are more united with your group, you are less likely to commit suicide. Then you would not commit suicide. If you are loner, not connected, your chances of committing suicide are more. That is what the theory says. All right. Now, my question was how to deduce a hypothesis from this. Let's redefine suicide as psychic morbidity. What does that mean? Psychic means mind. Morbidity means being ill, state of illness of mind. So I say psychic morbidity is inversely proportional to solidarity. Suicide is an example of that. All right. Now, suicide is only one psychic morbidity. There are other psychic morbidities also. Schizophrenia. All right. Obsessive behavior. Paranoid behavior. These are all psychic morbidities. So, if I make it more general and say psychic morbidity is inversely proportional to solidarity, this gives me three hypotheses. Schizophrenia is inversely proportional to solidarity, obsessive behavior is inversely proportional to solidarity, paranoid behavior is inversely proportional to solidarity. I have three new hypotheses. They are guess. They have not yet been tested. So, they are only hypotheses. All right. So, that is why how from the existing theory, I have deduced hypothesis. Now, this will guide my further research. All right. So, this is how we deduce a hypothesis from the theory. You have understood that? Any question? Okay. So, now hypothesis is tested under experimental conditions in natural sciences. physics, chemistry, biology. You test a hypothesis by creating a controlled situation in the laboratory, all right? Or you may do that by simulating a model on the computer. Both are controlled conditions. However, in sociology, we do not have this privilege. Experimentation is rarely possible in sociology. It is neither possible nor desirable. You can't experiment on people's lives. Suppose you want to see the effect of divorce on children. So you will not destroy a happily married family first and then see what problems do children develop. All right, that is ethically undesirable. So therefore, we don't have experimental testing of hypothesis, but we test the hypothesis. So hypothesis tells us the data we have to collect. What kind of information is needed? And based on that, we create what is called research design. I have not written that in the flowchart. Research design is total arrangement of research in order to ensure that research can be completed in the stipulated time with the limited resources, because mostly research grants are very meager. We don't have enough money to conduct research, and the research has to be completed in a limited time. So we have to make a rational arrangement so that research can be completed within the stipulated time. So that entire arrangement is called research design. So research design leads to data collection, and then it is followed by processing the data. There we use comparison and classification for processing the data. We arrange the data as per the hypothesis. Suppose here the hypothesis was, I come back to the same example, that rate of suicide among women depends on divorce, or there is a direct proportionality. Rate of divorce is directly proportional to rate of suicide among women. Now it has to be tested. So what will I do? I will collect information about rate of suicide and rate of divorce, say in Delhi. Then I will do that in Chennai, in Bombay, Mumbai. Then what will I do? I will compute the percentage of women who committed suicide who were divorcees. And if I find that divorcee women were more in number than those who were not divorced, then, and this pattern is found to replicate in all the cities, then we will say this is true. The hypothesis has been proved. Clear? Now, so this is how we establish a correlation by using comparative method. We establish a correlation between divorce and suicide. Now, what is correlation? When two things vary together, they are considered to be correlated. In sociology, it's very difficult to have a causal explanation. Now, what is the difference between correlation and causal explanation? Cause means when one factor is both necessary and sufficient for the happening of the other phenomena, then it is called a cause. So, divorce as the cause of suicide. If divorce is necessary, that unless a woman gets divorced, she would not commit suicide. And secondly, If she gets divorced, she would not wait for anything else but commit suicide. Then divorce is the cause. Now this is different from the correlation that more the divorce, more the suicide. But it doesn't mean that divorce is the cause. Of all you know, divorce was good riddance. The lady committed suicide because she became poor after divorce. All right? So poverty along with divorce led to suicide. So that has to be done. That can be found out only under experimental conditions, which are not possible in sociology. So therefore, we do not normally have causal explanation. We normally have only correlations. Did you understand this? So we test the hypothesis. And after testing the hypothesis, we find there are two possibilities. Either the hypothesis is proved. When the hypothesis is proved, then it becomes a thesis. Hypo means below the thesis, yet to be proved. Proved means thesis. So the hypothesis becomes the thesis. And if the hypothesis is proved repeatedly over time and place, for example, Durkheim, when he conducted a study of suicide, he collected data for 30 years in different countries of Europe. All right? So over time as well as over space, the hypothesis was proved again and again. Then it becomes a thesis. It becomes a theory, sorry. Then it becomes a theory. The thesis becomes a theory if it is proved repeatedly. And if it is proved almost universally, then it is called a law. And it goes on to contribute to the existing knowledge, from which once again we deduce a new hypothesis. One possibility. Now, other possibility is hypothesis is disproved. Then it leads to modification of the existing knowledge. From whichever source the hypothesis was deduced, even if it was perspective, as I told you, the assumptions in perspective in science are not sacred by itself, they are constantly tested, and only if they are supported by facts they are retained. So whether perspective, common sense or theories, whichever was the source of hypothesis, that is modified in the light of the data. And then we deduce a new hypothesis again. This is the logic of scientific method. Now, you have understood so far? Everybody has understood? Okay. Now, here we are talking about thesis, theory and laws. So, our goal is to arrive at theories and laws. They are called generalizations. These theories and laws are called generalizations. You remember I said gathering of information, there are three steps: observation, comparison and generalization. So these are all examples of generalization. Now I shall tell you what is generalization. You can write down the definition. Huh? जोर से बोलिए, मैं सुनता हूं. हाँ, the initially the tentative statement जिससे हम शुरू करते हैं वो Now, so the goal or the objective of science is to arrive at generalization. Examples are theories and laws are examples of generalization. So what is a generalization? First write down the definition. That generalization is a form of propositional knowledge that holds true for the whole class of phenomena. Generalization is a form of propositional knowledge that holds true for the whole class of phenomena. Full stop. It postulates the existence of a determinate relationship it postulates the existence of a determinate relationship between a set of variables in terms of which empirically ascertainable regularities can be explained. Now read it, I'll explain it. There are two aspects to generalization. One, that it is general. That means it holds true for the whole class of phenomena. See, Durkheim's statement, rate of suicide is inversely proportional to solidarity. It holds true for all Englishmen, for Frenchmen, for Germans, for Americans, everywhere. It does not tell us only one case why Marilyn Monroe committed suicide. All right, she had broken marriages and she was very isolated. So that can be explained by this empirically ascertainable regularity. That means observable things can be explained by a generalization. So two things. One, it is general. It stands for the whole class of phenomena. And secondly, that it explains the reality. I'm feeling a little giddy. Chalo. Now, why do we have generalizations? One, I have shown here, generalization gives rise to further research. That from the theory we deduce new hypotheses and new research can be carried out. Secondly, generalization can help in prediction. Generalization, if you discover a pattern in reality, like Newton's law of motion, it can predict what will happen if there is an action. How would there be reaction? So you can predict the phenomenon. And if you can predict, you can control. So the knowledge becomes practically useful. That is the reason we try to arrive at a generalization. Now, here there is one important point. When is it possible to have a generalization? When is it possible? You say in science we discover the law, we don't invent a law. So, a generalization is possible if the reality itself displays a pattern, if there is a pattern in reality. Where there is no pattern in reality, generalization is not possible. This is again an important issue when we'll talk about sociology as a science, that in nature there is a total pattern. Every time I leave this pen, it is going to fall down. But human behavior does not follow that pattern. I'll give you an example, an interesting example, that there was a gentleman who worked in a hotel. It is narrated by him. And he had been trained in the hotel management courses that anticipate the likings of your guest and try to act accordingly. So he used to have a royal family coming to his 5-star hotel, which used to ask for a particular ice cream. So next time when they checked in, he ordered for that ice cream in bulk, because they were to stay for a month. So he said lot of ice cream would be needed. When they turned up at the dinner table in the evening, he offered the ice cream. They said, "Oh, we are bored. We want a change." So his boss shouted at him that, "You fool, why did you order so much?" So in human behavior, there are limited patterns. I'm not saying there are no patterns at all, but very limited patterns. People fall in love and fall out of love. So patterns tend to be limited, and therefore only limited generalizations are possible in social sciences. So this is about scientific method. Now, if there is any question, please tell me. The entire category, people falling in the whole category. Like if I say civil services aspirant has to be a graduate, I am not talking about one person that he should be a graduate only to write civil services exam. Anyone who writes civil services exam has to be a graduate. So this is applicable to the entire category of people. All right. This is what is meant by the whole class of phenomena. See, correlation means two phenomena are related. They vary simultaneously. All right. Either directly or inversely. Causal means one phenomena is a necessary and a sufficient condition for the second phenomenon. That if cause happens, the effect is bound to follow. Huh? I didn't get your question.
Sir, earlier you said that symbols and concepts are in very precise manner in science. Why is that so?
Symbol. See, if I make a scientific finding and that has to be tested by you. So we should be on the same wavelength, no? We should be on the same plane. When I say suicide, I mean the same thing as what you think is suicide. Only then you can test my finding, isn't it? So the meanings have to be standardized and precise so that there is no ambiguity.
When you said that experimental testing is not possible in social life,
Sociology, yes.
did you see that is the reason research design is made in sociology?
No, research design has to be made anyway. We have different kind of research designs. There is descriptive design, there is experimental design. Experimental design is rarely possible in sociology. But we have to make arrangement of conditions to test the hypothesis. So research design has to be made anyway. Huh? Even if research design, descriptive research design. Descriptive research design is possible where you accurately and in detail describe a phenomena on the basis of observation. That is possible. Any other question? Is that all?